Welcome, everyone, to Unboxing Logistics. I'm your host, Lori Boyer from Easy Post, and I am excited today because have been doing kind of a series looking into peak season that's coming up here before we know it, of 2025, and we have brought on a really cool expert in the transportation space. So we're going to be talking everything, capacity, demand, what's happening with freight this upcoming season. Obviously, Colby, oh, I gave away his name a little bit. Colby is going to be here to talk to us, and can predict, but doesn't have all the answers. So we're going to be chatting about that today. Really excited. We have Colby Varley on. Colby, can you go ahead and introduce yourself just a little bit?
Sure. Good morning, Laurie. Thank you so much for having me on. Colby Varley, Advanced Transportation Services. We're headquartered here at Salinas, California, and I'm currently the vice president and principal.
That's awesome. Fantastic. So, one thing before we dive into our topic, and I'm going to be asking him everything Colby's seeing. Okay, Colby has a super cool background. He was telling me all about it. He's grown up basically with logistics and supply chain coming out his ears since he was in the cradle. So, really great expert for us here to be able to learn from. But before we even start, and I love this question for you, Colby, because of the fact that you have been around the industry for so long. Who is a person that you really admire in the industry, and why do you admire that person?
Sure, absolutely. So probably two people. Definitely my dad. Without him, none of this would have been possible. He's on the produce side, but just growing up around that,
What's your
he's been in
dad's
the
name, Colby?
guy, Guy Varley.
Guy Varley.
So he's been in the industry 40 plus years, and really well known in his niche. He specializes in cantaloupes and honeydews. So anybody kind of in that arena knows him. Um, and also our founder, Marshall Kipp, he formed ATS in 1984. And anybody that's kind of dealt with highly perishable food and produce and logistics most likely knows Marshall. Um, Kind of really the kingpin of over the road transportation. Great reputation, just awesome individual.
Oh, that's fantastic, and shout out to Guy. I just wanna say I love honeydew. I love cantaloupe. They're, like, my favorite summertime fruits, so thank goodness we have people like your dad who have overseen that for so long to make sure that I can get my yummy treat in the summer.
That's it.
That's right. Okay, so we are getting so many questions about peak 2025. The world's just kind of crazy night right now between tariffs and capacity, demand, what we're seeing. So I just want to ask kind of a general question for you, Colby. What do you feel like is different heading into this peak season? Or do you feel like it's still kind of same as a typical season? What are you anticipating?
Just all factors are kind of anticipating flatline from our side. So, we're looking at a couple of factors. Obviously, not to get political, but the economy, there's a lot of stuff going on globally. And it seems like consumers can tighten the belt a little bit more. Uh, with all the immigration and deportations going on, like we don't have to go down that route. But at the end of the day, those are mouths that are eating, um, food that's grown and bought and sold here in the United States. So, I don't know what the exact number is, but when you move that amount of mass people outside of our network, um, there's less orders, right? Whether it's food banks, whether it's grocery stores, whether it's restaurants, like they're not having the same amount of mouths to feed that we've had over the last few years. Um, so we're seeing a lot of that. Obviously, the tariffs have kind of played a part here and there. Canada wasn't too happy, and I know they kind of cut a lot of our grower shipper partners off for a little bit. I think that's starting to change. They're coming back in. But also it's summertime, so they have their own stuff growing up there, so they don't rely. as heavily on the United States. So those are just a few of the factors. I mean, we've seen it. If you look at where we are now to where we were last year and the year before, our load count is down, and that's not, you could go talk to the customer and say, "Hey, our load count is down," and they tell you the same thing, like, "Hey, our order count is down." It's not that you're doing anything wrong, but we're seeing less POs coming from our customers, which is obviously goes to the end user. And that seems to be the consensus that we've gathered from a lot of our clientele. Their orders are down. So I think those are some of the main drivers of why we're seeing kind of a softer, flatter uh, freight market. And then also, I mean, I remember as a kid, people were talking about supermarkets and grocery stores going on ad, right? Like you'd see the paper, right, with, "Hey, come get this, a special, 1.99 or 99 cents." I feel like that doesn't exist anymore. Like you talk to people that are selling the supermarkets and whatnot. Like, yeah, there might be some ads, but like back in the day, they take 25, 30 loads of a certain item and just blow them out. And now it's like they'll go on ad, but they're only taking maybe two or three or four loads.
Why do
So
you think that is?
I think a lot of that might be due to COVID, that the prices got so inflated. Because I can tell you, like the prices got inflated, everyone was complaining. Everyone's still complaining, right? When you go to the grocery store, hey, my grocery bill is two, three times what it should be. Okay. But then on the other side of the spectrum, our freight rates are down. The market is way down, right? So the freight cost is substantially down from COVID. Then you go talk to a grower shipper and they can't even sell the stuff, right? Like there's no market. There's so much product that there's no market. But then you go to the supermarket and the prices are still inflated. So I think the grocery chain or the retailer has figured out, hey, we had to raise these prices during COVID. The consumer's still paying them. Like, why would we lower them if our cost is, kind of less? So I am pretty confident. I mean, I don't have factual data, but I mean, you could do napkin math and say, hey, the prices haven't come down, but the cost to get it there and the cost of what they're buying it for has come down. So, obviously they're probably making the major margin there. And if you don't lower that cost at the consumer level, they're not gonna push packages.
Yeah, one of the challenges as we come into peak for everyone then who is listening who doesn't ship those critical goods, right? Like I had to still buy my groceries. My kids had to still eat. That's just how life is. But it trickles down to everyone else because we stop buying kind of the nice to have things because we have to spend more on the necessities and on the basics. And so that does like hit demand kind of all across the industry. What are customers or shippers for you seeing? What are they doing to try to offset this sort of falling demand you're seeing?
I feel like they're behind it, right? They're still everyone's chasing it. I don't think they really
Reactive.
yeah, they're reactive. I think everybody put stuff in the ground thinking it was gonna be a little bit better from the wintertime, and it just hasn't changed. So I don't know, ultimately there's too much supply in the market right now. Which, telling a farmer to try and plant less is can be difficult, right? They're trying to grow. They want to plant more acres, but if you're not seeing a profitable return on that, it's not going to work. So I know that our shipper partners, they're feeling the pressure from the retail side, right? Because there's so much product in the marketplace. People are so hungry for business that um, you know, people are coming back to them on existing contracts and saying, "Hey, I'd like to relook at this." Like, we're seeing some lower pricing, that we try and take advantage of, which they're just doing business, right? I mean, they're looking out for their best interest. So, I think until either the economy picks up, there's some price adjustments at the store level, or there's a shift in supply, whether that's people are going to plant less, or there's some sort of um, weather event. There's some sort of insect event. A couple years ago, we got hit with some pretty heavy insect here in the Salinas Valley that took out a lot of the lettuce crop. So we need something of that sort to drive a market. Right now, it's just flatlined.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously with softer demand, that affects the freight volumes and whatnot. Are there any areas you're seeing maybe geographically or within, different sectors that are being particularly hit harder or doing better?
We've been really struggling out of Washington since the onions and potatoes have stopped up there. The blueberries and the cherries have not really taken off. So that's been a really tough area for us to get out of. Um, Texas has been really tough. Just not enough freight going anywhere out of there. Usually this time of year, like Nogales, Arizona and Yuma, Arizona is really capacity gets really tight. Uh, the Mexican grape crop, they're estimating about a 2 million box loss out there. They got hit with some pretty heavy weather in some of the Mexican grape growing regions. So you take 2 million boxes out of the equation, that's a lot of trucks that they're not going to get loads. On the cantaloupe deal, it seems like those shippers, they can't get out of their own way. I mean, they're doing anything they can to get somebody to take an order. And there seems to be plenty of capacity to pick them up. So it just seems like everywhere is really flat. But I would say like Texas and Washington or the Pacific Northwest are just brutal for us right now to get a truck out of there. I mean, we've had trucks every week deadheading back to California to come pick up a load because there's just nothing there.
Interesting. And so how does it work when you do get such low demand? Do you still ship out smaller amounts in the truck? Do you I mean, how does that work from the freight standpoint? Do you just say no, we don't take a small amount or
So since COVID, at that time they were shipping just whatever they could, right? Whether it was half a truck, a quarter of a truck, like they were just shipping it. Well, since then, that trend has really reversed. So now everybody is maximizing their cube space. So for us, it's either maxed out on weight or they're maxing them out on pallet space. So for us, like none of these trucks are going light or, with room on them. These guys are maximizing the space to get every dollar out of it that they can. Um, but for us, there is a kind of an area where we'll say, hey, because we're not the cheap guys, right? We're a value add customer or client, and there's you have to pay for that service. Now, obviously, the market's going to dictate how much we can charge for that, but we're normally, a few $100s more than somebody else. But there's some customers that are just so bottom of the barrel that it's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to cover it at that rate. Like I'm going to have to pass. Because, we're not trying to lose money. And it seems like on the ones that you're don't have enough money and you really struggle on them, and then it's like you end up having a service failure, and then you look, you know, bad, right?
yeah,
You
right.
can't get it done, so it's like
Right.
you're
People don't want to
losing
use you
money.
again.
Yeah, you don't want to. So it's we found that it's better to just politely decline.
Okay.
We've kind of gotten to the point that no business is better than bad business. Um,
Okay. Oh, I like that. No business is better than bad business.
right.
That's a and clarify, like go expand on that.
Sure.
What
So, I mean, are you going to take an order and lose $500? Or are you going to
Mhm.
pass on the order and not lose anything?
For people, Colby, who are maybe kind of new to transportation, you know, is there an easy way to know for sure that they're going to be, this is bad business. I'm going to be lost. Do you just have to stick to your formulas and calculate it? I know some people are taking stuff just to get any business, and then they do end up
Yeah.
losing.
So for us, I mean, we've been doing it 40 years. Last year we did around 20,000 shipments. So we have like a pretty good understanding day to day of what we're feeling, and what we're talking with our carrier partners, and taking their temperature, and kind of seeing, like, you'll know um if you're under market on an order. Like, they're gonna call you out on it, like, hey dude, like, you're that's too cheap. um so you have an idea, and then you're working with other customers and seeing other loads on similar lanes, right? It might be going in the same direction from a similar area. So you can gauge it, like, hey, I'm getting paid X from somebody else in that same exact lane. Like, I know I can't do it for $500 less, right? Like, I'm already doing it for somebody else. So just the internal data that we have, communicating with our vendors, market conditions, uh, that's where we're kind of, learning day to day on what we feel the right rate is, or what it's going to take to provide the standard of service that we're looking to uphold.
All right, I love that. So a couple of great call outs there. If you're, wondering what's going on, be communicating with your vendors. You mentioned being in contact with your carrier partners. You mentioned um, looking at your internal data. So going back, even if you are newer, we had a bunch pop up around COVID and different things happening. If you are newer, go back and look at your data and try to create some sort of understanding. Earlier, you also mentioned, Colby, that you've moved people from locations that aren't doing well. So you mentioned bringing trucks out of Washington to go down to California or something. So obviously, kind of keeping an eye on geographically what's working well for you. Any other tips, I guess, if you're looking to like try to figure out where you should be focusing your efforts, especially if we're coming up to a peak where maybe, capacity is there's plenty of it and we've got low volume going out. Um, any tips? You've been there 40 years in your company doing this. How do you survive kind of these difficult times?
Sure. So for us, I mean, it's really staying true to what we do. We specialize in highly perishable food and produce. So I would say, to your question, anybody like looking, what should I do? Stay in your niche, stay in your lane, and become the expert in that field. Whether you're doing dry freight, whether you're doing bulk tanker, whether you're doing flatbed. Obviously, all the markets fluctuate all the time. But we just stay true to highly perishable food and produce. Like, if flatbed's just going crazy, like, to me, it's like, good for those guys, right? But I'm not trying to be a flatbed guy just because the market's going absolutely crazy.
Okay, love that. I just am gonna point that out. So don't give in to that temptation to be like, maybe I should expand what I do. Okay, so stay in your lane, not literally here in our transportation, but stay in your lane, stick with your niche, and okay, that's great. Anything else advice there?
Those are probably, that's probably the best piece of advice. You know, and just know that there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, and hopefully the good way outweighs the bad. Uh, but we found that just sticking in our lane, constant obedience in the same direction, that's worked the best for us.
What are you seeing in terms of like balancing costs and service? You mentioned that you're like high quality, that you aren't the cheapest out there. Are we seeing priority shift, during times like this towards that kind of reliability and, just really great service? I guess how do we balance service and cost? How do you do that?
So for us, obviously, service is the number one thing, and we do have to charge a little bit more for that. And I think it really comes down to who your customer is. So we're targeting customers that are shipping highly perishable food and produce. So, for example, a customer that's shipping a load of blueberries that's $250,000 load value, they're not tripping over a couple $100, right?
Right.
But somebody that's shipping paper towels or toilet paper, they might be more concerned about that. If the load doesn't get there when it's supposed to get there, it's not a big deal, right? It's not gonna, um, the toilet paper is not going to go bad. For us, on any produce shipment, the difference between being 1 day late is the difference of that produce making it through quality control of that receiver and not. So not only are you getting the load rejected, taking it somewhere, it has to be worked on consignment, and the customer just lost the ability to sell that load. So there's a lot of financial hiccups, and the guys that are dealing with these um, high value loads, they understand that there's more to lose than $200 or $300 if it doesn't make it. Um, and also, it's transportation. There's accidents, things happen. I don't know if you've had any dealings with the insurance company, but it's basically their job not to pay. They're looking for any reason not to pay. So what we do is say, for example, there's an accident, truck catches fire, whatever. We take the invoice, we pay that invoice immediately to our customer because I need them to keep doing what they're doing. I don't need them to go fight an insurance company and then we're on the back end fighting with the insurance to get paid. And, sometimes it takes 60, 90, 180 days uh, to collect payment from an insurance company. Like, I mean, they're literally doing everything they can not to pay. Um, so there's some other added value that, you might not necessarily see on the front end when you're getting quoted from somebody. Um, but all it takes is one time for something to happen. And, you think, oh, well, maybe that extra $200 was worth it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a great point. So one of the things you do is just deal with the insurance yourself, rather. I just saw a news article on a truck that had been robbed and got all the Nintendo Switch 2s stolen. I don't know if you saw that. Like 2000, my kids, love the Switch, so that was an interesting thing. But yeah, there are hiccups, there are challenges all the time. So that completely makes sense.
So luckily for us, I mean, we don't deal with a lot of that. Just
People
for the
aren't
fact,
stealing all the blueberries.
yeah, just or the strawberries, right? Because the lifespan is
Yeah.
so short, right? A Nintendo Switch, you
Mhm.
can take it to a warehouse and sit on it for a year and then bring it back into the market. With our kind of stuff, you can't um do that.
Okay, well, I loved your point that it really you talked about understanding your audience. So knowing who your customer is. Again, if you're spreading out your business so you're not concentrating on kind of a niche audience, then you're going to have different needs and different desires because the type of freight that you're shipping is going to be completely different. So if you focus on a customer who has the same challenges, who are having these high value shipments and, have the same issues, then you can really hone in and focus on that. I really love the importance of learning what's important to your customer. How do you recommend people who are in freight and really anyone shippers? How do you guys keep ahead of what's important to your customers and what you should be focusing on to give them value?
Just communicating with them, seeing what's going on. You don't have to call them just to get an order. And adding value, and say I hear something through the grapevine that I think's interesting, I can go to them and say, "Hey, have you heard anything about this?" And just kind of bouncing ideas, what they're struggling with or what a new retailer's doing that we kind of need to get prepared for. Like Costco, they just implemented this whole thing for the drivers with an app now to check in. So we're trying to get that all implemented into our um, system. So, there's constant change going on. So just talking to them, what they're seeing, are they short on product? Do they have too much product? Do they anticipate more orders coming down the pipe? Do they anticipate less? Like just trying to get a gauge of what their needs might be and how you can better serve them. That's the best way.
I love that. I love where you said you don't have to call them just to get an order. That it's so true. And it's so true, honestly, across whatever you're doing. So whether you're a shipper, whether you're freight, whether you're transportation, whether you are sitting in an office and being SaaS,
Yeah.
understanding your customer and what they need. You never know when just taking an extra 10 minutes to talk about their challenges and what's going on may spur an entire new idea or really up what you're doing in your business.
Absolutely.
I love that. Um, okay, so as people are preparing in the industry, we have peak season obviously at the end of 2025. You have your own sort of peak seasons with different produce and different things coming out at different times of year, right? What mistakes do you see people making as they prepare for this, increased peak season or increase of volume? Any time different industries had different peaks. What do you see are the biggest mistakes people make as they prepare for peak?
I just think, it happens every year and it's unfortunate. They put out RFPs. Um, you give them, obviously it's an estimated guess, but you have an idea of where you think the market's going to go. And I almost relate to it. And this is horrible, but I'll say it anyway. But somebody that has an addiction, um, because what happens is they're addicted to that lower price, right? It's an addiction. It's there and it's sitting right in front of them, and it's like they know probably that it's gonna bite them. It's gonna burn them, right? They're not gonna feel good. Something's gonna happen, and just there's always somebody that can't fight that addiction, and they go with that cheaper option that they don't know, they might be a new carrier to them, right? And they don't know the ins and outs of how it's going to work, but that saving that they see of $300 a load is just it's too much for them to say no to. And they end up signing them up, and you know, this season it hasn't been as bad, but other seasons, peak season hits, and now all of a sudden all those loads are on their internal bid board, and they're going for getting covered for $1,000 more than um, what they went into that deal with somebody else. And then they learn their lesson for a minute, and then it's like they forget, right? And that urge or that addiction comes back, and they don't know, they can't fight it, and they go back down the same rabbit hole again, and then they end up doing the same thing. And it's like, guys, like, how many times is it going to take for you to learn, like, hey, the cheapest option is not necessarily the best option. And I'm not saying that you need to go with the most expensive option, but I feel like the customers that do the best job that we deal with, when we talk about the RFP, I mean, they throw the highest and the lowest out, right? And they say, hey, like, I get rid of the lowest, I get rid of the highest, and I really center in on that median five, right? Like, where's the average, right? And I look at the five, about five or six guys that are all in that same median area. And he's like, they look at, hey, if I got five or six reputable people all quoting within $100, $200, like that rate's got to be somewhere in there, right? But you have somebody way under or way over, it's like, hey, let's get rid of those. Those are, the lowest and the highest, kick them out. And then let's
Great
zero in
advice.
on that five or six middle range that are all, within $100, $200, and the reputable companies that are in your in your network. You've worked with them, you know what they're capable of. And it's like, you're probably gonna be prepared, and you're gonna sleep better at night. You know what their track record is. And it's like, if something happens, it's like, hey, I had five other guys within $100 of that. Like, you know, so that's just something that, we try and keep in mind. Like, we're not trying to be the cheapest. I don't want to be the guy to come back to you halfway through the season and say, hey, Lori, um, I can't continue to service our agreement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. A great piece of advice for shippers out there, throwing out the top and the lowest. Um, that makes a big difference. What other things, we're getting a little bit towards the end here, but what other things do you recommend that people look for when they're making that selection? So now you've got five or six. How do you determine, that maybe the rate is one factor that I love your point of view that don't only look at the rate, right? Sometimes that's like we're so focused on that, I can't fight this feeling any longer, right? We're like, I gotta do price. what are the other factors we should be looking for in kind of weeding out what's in it, what is going to be a good person to go with?
Sure. So something that we've kind of done, and actually one of our other customers, they're really diligent about it. Like probably the most diligent that I've seen. But actually going to your vendor.
Okay,
Um,
great advice.
and I know that can be hard, but it is so worth it.
Boots on the ground,
So
Colby. I
worth
am
it,
there.
and
Mhm.
it's worked really well for us, especially like when I'm talking to a customer, like if there's an issue or if there's not, like, hey, I've been to their facility. I've been to their yard. Like I know their process. Like the truck comes in, the truck and trailer gets inspected, the trailer gets cleaned, it gets parked in this row for the empties, or if it's loaded, it goes on this side. There's somebody there monitoring it. You can really tell how a company operates by, what their facility is. And trust me, I'm not saying that you have to go see something that's big and grand and crazy. I mean, we've seen small ones that are just clean, right? You go there, it's nice, it's clean, it's not huge, it's not big, but it's professional, right? And it's clean and the employees are professional and the workspace is professional. And it's just going and seeing that, you'll see all types of spectrum. And then you really know what you're working with,
And
right?
it's
Is
also a
this
red flag if they don't want you to come see it,
Yeah,
right? So if you
that seems to
ask,
be the
"Hey, I'd
big
love to
thing.
see it."
Everybody wants to come see you, right? All your vendors, "Oh, I wanna come see
Mhm.
you," and it's like, "No, I wanna come see you."
Yeah,
Right? Like, let me see what we're working with.
great
And
advice.
that's been really beneficial for us. Obviously, we're lucky here in California. A lot of our carrier group is located here. So, most people are within we can make a day trip and hit a handful of people. But also, we're really strategic. Like, we had to go to a customer conference out in Northwest Arkansas and we went 2 days early and hit 4 or 5 trucking companies that we deal with within a 200-mile radius of that area. So, wherever you're going somewhere, yeah, it might take an extra day, but it's like you're already making the effort to go all the way out there. What's an extra day to, go meet with 5 people? And I can tell you, like, you go do those things and you think you know a company, and you probably will be presently or pleasantly surprised. I mean, I can say on one of my last trips, I went and visited a trucking company and I thought they were, 30, 40 trucks. And I rolled in there and they've grown from that to 120. They're trying to grow for more. And I had something that had came up that fit them perfectly. And I mean, we just rocked it all winter long with them. And that probably wouldn't have all come together if I didn't make the effort to go see them, because they were 120 miles away from where I was going.
I
Um,
love that. You mentioned we were chatting before we started, shooting today, and you mentioned growing up that your dad just stopped everywhere all the time.
oh yeah,
Every trip you went on, you're going to visit places, you're going to see things, and that is I mean, that's some killer advice right there, Colby, is get out there. I I love your overall message to me has really been about communication, getting your boots on the ground, getting out there and talking to people, seeing what's going on, really diving in and not I've had a guest once call it kind of sometimes we stay in our ivory tower and just sort of sit at our computer and work or whatnot. And it really is critical that we are getting some of that face time. I love that.
yeah, and it's hard, right? Because we went through COVID and everyone was Zoom this and Zoom that, and but we've gotten to that point that it makes a huge difference with people. I mean, I don't even think you can measure the value of people really appreciate. Everyone knows that everyone's busy, right? Everyone knows you got a family, you got stuff at home, and when you're out on the road for 3, 4 days, and it's tough, right? I got a family, I got a young daughter and wife at home, and before all that, like I was gung ho, and now it's like you get some of that guilt, but at the end of the day, it's really all worth it, and it's for them, right? But
I was gonna say at some point you'll be bringing your daughter with you too.
yeah,
You'll be just like
absolutely,
your dad. You'll be like, "Come
yeah,
on, let's go see this." But
yeah.
yeah, on the other side, you were saying.
No, on the other side of that, like, the people that you're going to visit, right, like, it's a really big deal for them, it makes them feel special, and, um, that's what you got to do to be successful, I believe, in this business.
No, I agree. This business is extremely relationship driven, and it is very much a case where those small things make a big difference. And okay, so Colby, we're running out of time. Any last advice you have for people as we're coming up on kind of a low demand kind of time, or just in general that you have to share?
I'd say don't quit. Don't quit. Just keep going. It's
Things will
going to be
change.
tough. Yeah, it's going to be tough. But if there's anything constant, especially in the produce business, is change. I mean, that's it's constant. It's not going to stay like this forever. Markets will change. Something will happen. Um, it's just a matter of when and how much.
I love that. I love it. Okay. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about what you do, or if they just want advice, can they connect with you on LinkedIn? How should they connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm sure we can put the website, my email, phone number in the show
Yep.
notes. But yeah, I'm here. Reach out. Whether you're a customer, whether you're a trucking company, whether you're trying to get into freight and logistics, and hey, should I do this? I'm open to anything. So I'm pretty wide
That's
open.
awesome. Yeah. Take advantage of Colby's knowledge. He is fantastic. And obviously, he has broke his teeth originally as a baby on this industry and has been around it. He's got tons to share and is so willing. So thank you so much, Colby, for being here today.
Yeah, Lori, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We will see all of you next time and have a great day.